As you wish.
Valanov01 here, your ARPG OG. Here today with a special Shaman build that I'm bringing to everybody after a month of tinkering around with different options. This is my very first Last Epoch build guide that I've been posting, so bear with me if it is a little clunky, and get into the build. Starting out, primary, we spec'd into Avalanche here. It's one of our main damage dealers. We take the nodes that allow us to follow us for the maximum number of duration. We spec over here to make it into full cold damage. We take down here into these nodes to increase our damage with a multiplicative multiplier. And we take Alpine Guide to summon additional boulders. This is our first caveat. This node here and this path here is an in-game, like really high-end gearing option. You do need to focus more on crit rolls if you are going to go for Alpine Guide. Ideally, you're going to want to get over 50% crit chance. If you push it higher, awesome. If not, okay. If you can't do that, you're going to drop these points out of Alpine Guide, some of these points over here, to take down and max out the Stormfront node for additional boulders. Next up, we have Spriggan form. So, ideally, the main things you need to focus on here are getting your Totem Warden so you can get down here to Unbound Garden to maximize our number of totems. And then we take Iron Bark and Leaf Barrier for word gain from our armor. So, these other, this is useful up here if you want to spec into Ice Branch. This is what you ultimately want to do with an in-game setup to maximize the use of our Twisted Heart. Speccing into Ice Branch will give you +1 to the skill because it turns it into an elemental ability, as well as if you are using a Dragon Staff, you also get an additional +1, which makes the cost of going over here reduced by 2. This node and one of the points here is free, so it's only 2 points to allow you to generate more ward. Based on your skill levels, your points can be allocated over here as you need to get extra armor. Summon Spriggan, we pretty default setup here. We go down to get the extra base crit chance, the extra adapt to spell damage, and some extra healing and dodge, and the largest multiplicative health modifier we can get for him to keep him alive as much as possible. For our summon Thorn totem nodes, we get the extra duration and maximum totems here. We spec into Armor Shred and reducing the cone of attacks to, ideally apply Armor Shreds from all of our 15 totems that we'll be summoning, thanks to all of the increase here. And here we summon a total of 15 totems on this build. More on that later. And our filler ability is Ice Thorns. We use a two-handed staff, so it means 0 mana cost. I prefer the extra range. You can go with the extra cast when hit if you prefer it. I find the extra range to be more useful, especially when you're pushing really high corruption or tougher content. So these nodes through here are very important. Obviously, we're going to maintain 15 totems, so we're pretty well covered here. This node here, we get 12% per totem of a more multiplier, which is a lot of extra damage. So this allows us to get a huge more multiplier, almost 300% for our Ice Thorns, which we cast for free at very high cast speed. Going over our passives, starting here in the base Primalist, we try to get as much hit points as possible. I like this Berserker node. The last 35% of your health is damage reduced greatly when you're at low health. Scales nicely with endurance. Beastmaster, we take Ursine Strength and just some basic points in aspect of the boar. Don't invest far enough to get this stuff. In the Druid tree, Chitinous Plating and Fruity Prowess and Thicket of Thorns, for more survivability, armor. This is optional. It's nice once you do get to max level just to pick this up for the extra move speed and cast speed. In Shaman, this is the important stuff. We want to make sure we get 5 points in Totemic Fury for that extra 25% cast speed. We max out Shamanistic Infusion to get that 8% penetration for our cold damage. Pick up 5 points here in Hailbringer for extra cold resist. Extra cold damage for our spells here. Extra adaptive spell damage from Rune of Awe. And we max out Protective Circle to get a huge amount of elemental and physical resist based on our totems, as well as maxing out the Ascendant Circle node to get an additional large amount of spell damage bonus per our totems. Which again, we summon up to 15 totems. And we also get another 42% on max rolls on these per totem. So that brings our grand total to 74% cold spell damage per totem. So we're looking at, with our gear and all of our bonuses, we end up at about 1700% cold spell damage with the current setup that I'm running. Now, that cold spell damage, when put through a 300% more multiplier, leads our Ice Thorns going from a paltry 6,000 DPS to well over 100,000 DPS on a skill that is cast very frequently. Going over our gear, best in slot here is going to be a Dragon Staff, because that is giving us +1 to all of our damaging abilities. You want cast speed implicit is the primary. You're going to want to get critical strike chance. Your next best option that allows you to work towards that Alpine Guide route that I mentioned. Your suffixes are not that important. Slow is great. If you can get freeze multiplier, awesome. Not that important. Moving over to Titanheart, our chest. You want to ideally get more hit points. I managed to snag Ice Thorns. Nice for extra spell damage and some points there. Not necessary. Of course, extra hit points is the preferred thing there. For your helm, you are going to want a Horned Cowl. This allows you to get damage and leeches health as a implicit affix on your helmet. The other affixes are not overly important. You're going to want to shoot for increased health. On your amulet, again, the actual amulet you use isn't overly important. You can go with a silver amulet for that crit implicit, or an Oracle Amulet if you want to reduce your damage over time taken further, or whatever amulet you can find that has the stats really where you're looking for a Frailty on hit and Shred Armor on hit, and ideally critical hit strike prefixes for the setup that I referred to with Alpine Guide. For rings, generally I use these to cover my extra resistances and filling in spell damage, critical strike chance, health or endurance where you can do that when it allows for your resistances. For a belt, we use Isidora's Tomb Binding, which allows us to get a lot of extra armor, which I'll come more to that here in a second when I explain all the interactions between these skills and abilities in practice. Boots, not anything special here. If you can get a pair of Snowdrift with a legendary and an increased movement speed roll, I would go with those. Really, I just use these for hit points and move speed. The armor roll is nice, giving us some more base armor. Gloves, Frostbite Shackles, we use those to maintain a high amount of ward retention. When we have all of our totems up, our ward retention is significantly high. At 347% cold resist, allowing us to get a large chunk of ward retention since we have 15 totems, which that allows us to generate additional ward from our Twisted Heart and from when we turn into Spriggan form. We summon our Thorn totems via Thorn Totem summon on hit idols, which it will take a long time to farm out these particular fixes. It did for me. I have some with lower cold damage per active totem rolls. You can give up a little damage to maintain those. Your other idle slots, haste on Totem Summon is nice. I use critical strike avoidance here to help cap my crit avoidance with my Spriggan. Really, health, armor, ward retention, any stats like those are useful when it comes to those. So when it comes to the different interactions at play here, our high cast speed allows us to generate lots of extra ward. Once we get all of our totems up, our damage is significant. Now, if I can manage to push my crit higher, I could see this going up even further. But, I mean, the build is extremely tanky, as you'll see in the boss kill videos that I'll be posting. The build's survivability comes mainly, or in a large part, from the Twisted Heart of Orobyss that drops from the Emperor of Corpses. It is a level 80 item. Dragon Staves, generally with good mods, require pretty close to level 80 as well. And the Frostbite Shackles also require higher levels. You could theoretically attempt to level as this. I'm actually fairly certain you could. I don't see any major issues. You would, instead of using Frostbite Shackles, you're gonna, maybe fill in some gloves with some int rolls, get some type of ward retention to retain some of the ward you gain from going into Spriggan form. But, the extra reduction from Titan Heart, if you can find one, not that rare of an item. You should be able to get one early to pair with a staff. Some variety. You could also get the staff that gives +2 minion skills, and that would give you some extra points across these 3 abilities instead of just your damaging ones. It is another option that is slightly lower level requirement. Now that I've explained the build mechanics, we are going to cut into some Twitch clips of me killing various bosses to show some of the performance and what you can expect with the build. If you like what you see, please like, follow, subscribe on YouTube and Twitch. I stream on Mondays during the day and Thursdays in the afternoon. Thank you very much. Enjoy the build.